Flutie friends, welcome to the studio. Today I want to talk about E major and C sharp minor. So one thing to remember whenever I do these Sunday wheels of practice, which is probably what led you here, whenever I pair two scales together, it's typically going to be the major and the relative minor. So what does relative minor mean? So relative minor just means that it is the minor scale that shares the same key signature. The little light bulb went off in your head. Awesome. That's what we want. So when we start to attack this major minor pair, right? We want to think about the major scale to start with. So we have E major. So E major means that our starting note is E. We're always going to start on E if we are playing an E major scale. So we have E major has 4 sharps. So if we look at our circle of fifths, then we can see the order of sharps are F sharp, C sharp, G sharp, and D sharp. Amazing. So for those of you that typically play in flats, let's talk about the enharmonics. So what is an enharmonic? First and foremost, an enharmonic is when we play one pitch and there are 2 names for it, for that note. So typically speaking, on the most basic level, it's going to be a sharp and a flat. So the example that we're going to start with would be F sharp. So the enharmonic for F sharp is G flat, and I'll tell you how we're going to get there. So if we look at the note F, and when we add a sharp to F, we're raising the pitch by a half step. So if there's only a full step between F and G, we're actually halfway in between. So what happens when we add a flat to a note? We lower it by a half step, right? So again, we're meeting in the middle between F and G, right? Because we're lowering G to be right in the middle between G and F. So F sharp and G flat are both right halfway in between F and G. So our enharmonic for F sharp is G flat. So what do you think the enharmonic for C sharp is? I'll give you a second to think about it. D flat, absolutely. So we've got G flat and D flat for those of you that typically play in flat keys. And then what's our next one? We have G sharp. What would be our enharmonic for G sharp? I'll give you a second to think about it. If you said A flat, you would be absolutely correct, my friend. Amazing job. Now the last one tends to trip people up quite a bit, okay? So we have D sharp, D sharp. What do you think the enharmonic for D sharp would be? If you said E flat, you'd be absolutely correct. Great job. So I don't necessarily want you to think about E major with flats, right? But I did want to give you the ability to relate to notes that you may already know with those enharmonics. So let's go through all of the notes of E major. So we have E, F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C sharp, D sharp, and E. There you go. You have your single octave E major scale. Now, of course, we can expand that up to 2 octaves or 3 octaves, depending on your instrument. For flute, you can go all the way up to 3 octaves for advanced players, but typical intermediate players are going to be playing at about 2 octaves, and then beginner players are going to be playing 1 octave. And that usually goes for most instruments, but particularly for flute, because I play flute, that is what the structure that we're going to follow here. So let's play E major. Now back down. Beautiful. So if you rewind that back, if you're playing a single octave scale, try playing along with me. Now let's talk about C sharp minor. So again, C sharp minor is the relative minor to E major, and that means that they share a key signature. So essentially, we're playing E major, but starting on C sharp instead of E. Now, if you're curious, there is such a thing as the parallel minor, which means they have the same namesake and starting note. Now, in this case, if we were playing E minor would have just one sharp because it is the relative minor to G major. But that is neither here nor there at the moment. Let's talk about C sharp minor. So again, we have 4 sharps in C sharp minor, but we are starting, instead of on E, we are starting on C sharp. So let's walk through it. So we have C sharp, D sharp, E, F sharp, G sharp, A, B, and C sharp. So again, this can be run from a single octave all the way up to 3 octaves in the case of flute, and I'm sure other instruments. But for right now, we're going to focus on the single octave C minor scale. So let's play it together. Beautiful. Let's head back down. So if you rewind that back, try playing along with me and see what happens. How does it sound different than the E major scale? How does it feel different to play? What situations and what emotions might you be trying to convey with a C sharp minor scale versus an E major scale? Incredible job today, Flutie. If you have questions, please drop them down into the comments below. I would love to hear from you. Otherwise, make sure you give this video a big old thumbs up and give my channel a follow if you would like more Sunday Wheel of Practice and expanded topics. See you later.